everybody. Thank you so much for joining tonight. Thank you, Elena, and everybody at ZeroSpace for having us again. This is our second installment of the ARKit-NYC meetup here at ZeroSpace. You might want to look at the monitors to get a better sense of what's going on here. Tonight we have 5 incredible individuals presenting and making announcements. I made some mid-journey portraits of everybody. We have Chloé Desaulles from New York Times Research and Development making a call on a rotary phone. Matt Miesnieks is reading a magazine, a paper magazine. Wendel, Matt is going to be talking about his new startup, LivingCities, and he's not going to share anything earth-shattering, so don't get your hopes up. He just confirmed that with me. Wendel is with Meow Wolf, and in this photo, he's in the line at a post office. And then Emmy Schwab is going to be talking about the New York City chapter of the XR Guild. And he's what is he doing here? I can't remember what he was doing. Oh, he's listening to a transistor radio. I didn't ask for headphones, but they just put that in. And then Andres Cuervo is delivering newspapers. And they are going to be up here in just a moment. I'm going to power through this because we have so many great speakers tonight. The one thing that really, really caught my attention since we last met is the announcement or the little commercial that Humane released. Did anybody see this commercial? Okay, so you should check it out. It's fun. It's very stylized and epic. But this is essentially what reports say they're working on, which is a projection mapping device that, according to the patents, will attach to your clothing and project onto any surface. And so the big use case is putting the stuff that you pick your phone up for all day, putting that information onto your hand. There's something really elegant and interesting about that. But again, I was just speaking to Matt, and he said, "I don't get your hopes up." But I'm an eternal optimist, so I'm going to hope for the best. One especially interesting use case the patents revealed is changing your oil. This is such a mundane, something you would think was so mundane, but the idea that you simply stand in front of your engine and it knows what car it's looking at and projects the instructions to do a task like this is pretty fascinating. And I think there's a huge amount of value there. So the idea of taking screens and displays out of the things that we do on the phone all day is really refreshing, and I am going to be hopeful. And we have this on tape, so we can come back and do an analysis of my prediction after it's released. So we're going to get right to it. I'm going to bring up Andres Cuervo. He's going to tell you a little bit about the Hex House, which is a new, well, I'll let him explain it. Everybody, Andres Cuervo.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Andres Cuervo, and I'm one of the 3 maintainers of Hex House, which is a new shared artist space in East Williamsburg. We have everyone from sort of technologists and painters to sculptors and fiber artists. So if you're looking for studio space or just interested in events, keep an eye out for our Instagram, which is Hex House with a 0 instead of the O. Or come by or come talk to me afterward to learn more.
Thanks, Andres. And up next, we have Emmy Schwab, who's going to tell us a little bit about the New York City chapter of the XR Guild. Emmy Schwab, everybody. Let's hear it.
Hey, folks. Hey, folks. My grandpa texted me this morning which is bizarre, right? My grandpa always calls. He never texts. But my grandpa texts me, Emmy, it's Grandpa. Meet at McDonald's? Which, again, bizarre, right? Because my grandpa didn't barely leave his apartment. But, this is his grandpa. And, I can't say no to Grandpa, right? So I said, yes, Grandpa, I will meet you at McDonald's. And he says, good. Emmy, meet me at the McDonald's on 23rd and 1st right now. And I say, yes, I will meet you, Grandpa, at the McDonald's at 23rd and 1st Street right now. Don't wait, he says. If you get here before 11 a.m., we will receive 50% off hotcakes in honor of National Grandpa Day. My grandpa passed away 2 years ago. But I did receive a message from him via Facebook 2 weeks ago. McDonald's will try to buy my grandpa to sell me hotcakes. We started the XR Guild because we know that McDonald's will try to buy my grandpa to sell me hotcakes. And I do not want that future for myself. Thank you for letting me speak. I have to run to another event. My friend John O can answer any questions about XR Guild. Please visit our website. You can check out our Discord and see the conversations that are happening, or you can find me on Twitter. My DMs are always open. Have a good evening.
Does anybody have any questions about the guild? No? Okay. All right. So thank you very much, Emmy. That was very moving. Actually, before we move on to Mitchell Hoover, who is the AR artist in residence here at ZeroSpace. I just wanted to give a shout out to Dion, who's sponsoring tonight. They're sponsoring the refreshments tonight, and I just wanted to give them a thank you. Thank you very much. So Mitchell, yes, please. Mitchell, if you could come up now, we're really looking forward to this. Thanks.
Hi, everybody. How's that? Okay, cool. I'm Mitchell Hoover. I'm a lead technical artist and AR artist here at ZeroSpace. For those of you who have never been here before, a little bit about us. We are an XR metaverse studio right here in Brooklyn with many different tools and skill sets among all of us, ranging from our virtual production wall, using Unreal Engine, stuff like that, our motion capture system with Vicon, photogrammetry upstairs, and our 45,000 square foot space for performances and stuff like that. I'm just gonna jump right into some of the work we've been doing here with augmented reality. I've been leaning into custom landmarkers. I don't know what people have been doing yourselves, but I've been trying to find different ways to use them in like an event space to sprinkle a little bit of something else on whatever's going on. So for example, in the far left, that is a corner of our space that I used as sort of a pivot point where you could lock that in and then you can go around the space and see like this whole ocean world without having to be tied to that location. So custom landmarkers are something that you can use as like a tracker without decorating the object itself. You don't have to do that. The next one is a pool table that we rigged up with mushrooms that you could tap and create like haptic sounds, and a entryway that we added some pillars to, and it's a lot of fun. But we can take this and basically adapt it to whatever event is going on. So it gives like a little bit of customizability to a space and immerses the audience a little bit more. So that's kind of been our big push here. As far as like what I've been doing personally, we see our lovely PA, Alan, modeling a dress I made in Snapchat because I've been exploring a lot of the body stuff, a lot of the world building stuff. And in the middle is a fully motion capture face character from Ready Player Me. And also playing around with segmentation to create boot filters, essentially, so you can make videos yourself, because I think allowing people to use your filters to create stuff is part of the fun. Dipping a lot into Spark AR here, learning different ways to utilize facial tracking, things like that, to just create your traditional fun filters. This is some other things. I've been really playing with messy, non-traditional body movement and filters. So for example, the middle is I keep just jumping right back to the mic, sorry guys. The middle is a giant square that I rigged up, and so you can be that square moving around. You don't have to be a traditional T-pose body. You can kind of do whatever you want. And the other are just examples of world shifts and portals that I've been playing with. Yeah, and one of the most important things for this is just leaving things a little bit messy. Because it just adds a little something to it rather than like a fully like polished product, because a lot of these are just experiments as well. And these are some more body filters I've been doing. I put out a Rick and Morty filter. Last year, it just hit 2.5 million on Snapchat, so that's just been huge. And it can do up to like 4 people body tracking. Same with like this drag show I usually operate the lights at. There's like crowd moving around, and you can use the filter to like bounce it around, and some Resident Evil tyrants in the center having a smoke break, I guess. That's about it for me. That's kind of been what my focus has been. Now I'm trying to push further into custom landmarkers. So if anyone is interested or wants to chat about it, I am Mitch L. Hoover on all socials, and I hope to hear from you soon. Thanks.
Thanks, Mitchell. Right, so coming up next, I would like to call up Chloé Desaulles. She is currently working at the New York Times Research and Development organization, or what's the term, department? Yeah, department. And she, hopefully she'll go into her history a little bit, and we haven't met yet, so it's great to meet you. So come on up. Tell everybody what you've been working on.
Thank you. So my talk stretches a little bit on the longer side. So hold on. So my name is Chloé. I'm an artist, a creative technologist. This is the only correct image that showed up on Google search. It was a lot of just computers. So sigh. I'm a researcher at the New York Times R&D and an art director in my free time. This woman seems to appear in multiple of these photos, in the last 2 in particular, and she seems to also be some sort of multi-hyphenate professional. So my friends frequently tease me that I have this bad habit of using double negatives a little bit too liberally. And one of my favorite ones is when I'm invited to do something is I'm not down. And I've noticed that I have some difficulty conveying that that's actually a very positive thing for me. 2 negatives make a positive, right? It just simply means that there's an asterisk attached to it. For example, I'm down to come, but wait, remind me who else is going. And sometimes that's how I feel about new media, just in general. I love it very dearly, but I feel like sometimes there's an asterisk attached to it. So I'm going to talk to you about some past work through a thread that is a bit more abstract, which is intentionality. And so I'm very much, whoa, sorry, that was very loud. I am very much of the camp that novelty is an incredible thing. It's like my line of work, and I'm very much in love with it. But I feel like to a certain extent, novelty should be intentional, if possible. It should be a decision that is made, and should not just be used for novelty's sake. Sad face. So that's the thread that I'm going to be using today. So this first piece that I'd like to discuss is a volumetric film that I premiered in 2019. A few people here might have already seen it because I've presented it at some other talks before. But it's a volumetric film with, essentially it's 5 interviews with people who have been diagnosed with progressive memory loss. And it's based off of neuroscience research, which uses the method of active recall, so asking a person to remember something over and over again to strengthen neural pathways related to those specific memories. So the intent here was to give a person the ability to selectively strengthen the neural pathways towards memories that they cared for, and also provide them a document that they can be remembered by on their own terms. So these are some snippets from 2 of the interviews, one with Pat McKay and my grandparents, Jerry and Jackie Stolzenberg. And I was specifically drawn to volumetric filmmaking because obviously like the technology is super fun and everyone here probably enjoys playing with these emerging technologies. But B, also because the medium informs the content. And by that, what I mean is that the visual quality of the film informs the narrative that I'm trying to convey, which, through the loss of frames and just visual inaccuracy can already contribute to the idea of a fading narrative. And quick note, the projections that you see on the background was digitally altered by just substituting the texture. I kind of like subtracting that depth and then adding a different texture, and those are what I'm calling memory triggers. And through that research, you're able to elicit certain memories to be stronger for a protagonist. That being said, the original intent of this film was to be displayed in VR because that's what makes sense. It's a volumetric film. But after thinking about it and spending a lot of time with the protagonists, that was maybe the least accessible way for a group of 5 people in their 70s to experience this content. And so I had to completely rethink how I wanted to bring this to the world and make it so that the content could be used in its intended purpose. So it ended up being a 3-channel video installed in a gallery, and then the video format was exported flat, no VR, and given to the protagonists so that they could review for the sake of the neuroscience active recall part of it. And so I've taken this flavor of thinking to a lot of work that I've done, including client work, or at least I try to. Like, for instance, what medium makes the most sense for the concept that we are trying to convey? What are we trying to achieve? And what medium will best do that? And although it often isn't the most straightforward answer, often not the easiest or not the cleanest sometimes, I found that people tend to engage with it in a pretty emotional way, which I always appreciate. The next project I would like to speak about is the art direction and design work that I did for my old place of work at Desaulles, and they happen to be sponsoring tonight, coincidentally. Shout out to my old team. And I spent a big part of 2020 working on the 2021 Snap Partner Summit, which is, I see Leo pumping fists in the back, working on the 2021 Snap Partner Summit. And so this was a really interesting project, in my opinion, because it wasn't only a huge technical effort from our 3D renderers side, and a huge creative effort on the design side, but it was also, and this was all done in Unreal Engine, by the way. These like super hyper realistic sceneries. But it was also a really interesting exercise in thinking about how we choose to talk about augmented reality, especially for a flat screen and for an audience that isn't necessarily well-versed in ARs because it's the sponsor conference. And so pictured here, it's actually kind of bright, but pictured here are some early sketches of how we were thinking of talking about shared AR, which is a really, really complex thing to explain on a 2D screen, and then the final way that it was presented in the conference. And to do this, oh God, whoa, that is very pixelated. Has it been pixelated this long, the whole time? Yes, no, okay. Yes, well, the original images do not look like this, but the way we were trying to convey AR being something that could be really beneficial to our world was through subtle transparency moments, through environmental typography, through spatial graphics, to kind of show that AR can exist organically with our world, and we're trying to position them differently than VR, which is trying to take you somewhere else. So we really valued putting someone in their real space, in an environment that is natural and recognizable and non-intimidating. And this obviously was before the introduction of pass-through VR, which is kind of changing the game. But I also wanted to mention, wow, these are very pixelated. But if you guys look on the side screens, they look a little bit more clear. But this piece, well, this section of the talk specifically was meant to introduce the AR headsets that were premiering in 2021. And we were very adamant about not wanting to overpromise what the field of view looked like. And I think our team did a really nice job of being very honest with the audience, as well as showing some graphics that feel really magical. And as much as I love client work like this because it's really fun and it goes really fast, there's one thing that ends up happening when you have a client is that sometimes, concept gets nicked because of budget or timeline. And that's how I ended up at the New York Times R&D, where I currently am. Is also very aligned with my personal practice, which is more documentary. And as slow as the New York Times is, and as bureaucratic as it is, there's something nice about that kind of environment because it really allows for a careful consideration of how you choose to tell a story. There's a lot of back and forths that go internally to agree to something. And obviously, who is better at telling a story than the New York Times? They're expert at that. They've been pushing the boundaries of immersive journalism for years now. And my department, R&D, has a lot to do with that. So I'm super excited to be there. And I wanted to share today some of the work that we've been doing on the wearables headset team in mixed reality. Disclaimer, we're not journalists. We're researchers that aid in the purpose of journalism. And a lot of this has not been published yet, so I can't address everything, but I'll speak to what I can. So the first few experiments that we were doing were related to how we can get accustomed to the new headsets on the market. And all of the experiments were around COVID, just because we have a lot of assets about it, because the New York Times has published a lot of content. So we did a bunch of different little demos to test interactions, how you could make a story feel more compelling in MR. Including with the HoloLens and the Quest 2 and pass-through. And one experiment that I would like to speak to specifically is an experiment done on COVID nurse shortages during the Omicron wave. And we were using computer vision and spatial sound to try and and convey something that is often lost in statistics. And so I spent a lot of time working on this, but I kept coming back to the fact that these statistics feel very impersonal to us. So how can someone feel attracted to a statistic even though it involves 1 million people? So the idea here was to use the headset to sense the world and give you a ratio of nurses compared to the number of people in your direct vicinity. There's no facial recognition happening or anything. It's just counting people in the space. And this is something that, this is a clip of the computer vision actually working. This was just a prototype video. But as you can see, it's super laggy. The HoloLens is chugging here. But it can obviously recognize the number of people in a room. And so this led our team to have a lot of conversations around why would the New York Times publish a mixed reality piece, and beyond the fact that we just could, what felt more compelling beyond that. And so I developed internally an MR intentionality checklist, and I'm not going to bore you with the specific details of that, but it essentially was trying to parse down to what makes MR more compelling than something we could do on 3D web or AR mobile. And so some of the overarching categories that I was pinpointing here were things that are inherently environmentally centric. So does it sense or does it react to your environment? Is it a story that is inherently body-centric? Is it about your body or about the individual user, or is it about movement and space? Then is it maybe related to the topic of the article, such as if it's an article about these new digital worlds that are appearing, it would make sense to do it in a digital medium versus print. But we always got this question as a pushback from the newsroom, and rightly so. Could it be better executed as a web piece or as an AR mobile piece, which are both way more accessible and already convey the information almost perfectly? And the answer, surprisingly, is often it could be better done on web. But there are stories that could be best executed in MR, and I think that it's important to keep that in mind as we move forward. What needs MR for the story to be told well, or the best that it can be? We're also playing with how we can encourage a user to move through space by using their body as triggers for more information, such as gaze on specific trigger points to reveal informational content, or their location of the body in space. We are also thinking about how we can link your mobile device as a way to read, because no one really wants to read in MR, right? It's kind of a bummer. And this is me and my colleague Fabio on site at Washington Square Park. And as well as a set of experiments for reporters specifically to help in the visual investigations process, which is my personal favorite and will be coming out in a few weeks, so look out for that. And this is one of my favorite days on the job so far, where we got to 3D scan the New York Times morgue for those tools that I was just referring to. But more on that in the next 2-3 weeks. In the meantime, thank you very much. I'm sorry that it was a bit longer. And please don't hesitate. These are my coordinates. Okay, cool.
Can you do a couple of questions? Does anybody have a question for Chloé? I was going to. What was I going to ask you? What the stuff that you shared? Do I need to cut that out of the video, or is that? Can you? It's fine. Okay, great. Yep. Come on up.
Intentionality checklist would not bore me.
Anybody else? Do we have any other questions for Chloé? Some thumbs up? Yep. Okay. Thank you very much. That was awesome. Thank you. Okay. Up next, I'd like to invite Matt Miesnieks, how did I do? Did I butcher it? I got it. Yes. He's been doing this for quite a while. Most recently, not most recently, but just more recently, he was the founder of 60. Well, I'll let you do all this. 60 AI Niantic bot it's their spatial mapping system now, and he's going to talk about his latest project, Living Cities. So thanks.
That's good. Hello. Yeah, this is a talk I gave at AWE a month or 6 weeks or so ago to introduce a new company that I'm working on. And like Andrew just said, I'm coming at this just after Niantic acquired my last company, which was called 60.ai. And if you're familiar with Niantic's Lightship developer platform, that's kind of was built up out of that acquisition. And the vision that 6D was built on was that for AR to really live up to its potential, the content needs to be able to interact and understand the real world. And a big part of being able to do that is we need to have a map of the world, like a 3D map. So if a Pokemon wants to run behind your couch, we need to sort of understand there's a 3D couch in your room. And if it wants to run down the hallway, we need to have a model of your apartment, your house. And if it wants to go down the street, now we need a 3D model of the street. And you keep pulling on that thread, and you realize that something like Google Maps needs to build up and one day, be in 3D and cover like everywhere that we may potentially go wearing our 3D glasses. And we called that idea the AR cloud, and a lot of companies are, all the big platforms really are trying to build out their own version of that. And so after Niantic acquired us, I had some time off and started to think about what comes after that. When you've got all these 3D maps of the world, like what do you do next? And so the idea for Living Cities kind of came from that thinking, and we're really trying to explore the idea of how do you merge the real world and the digital world, and what's going to happen when that happens, and how should it happen. Okay, looks like our fonts have lost. So the company's called Living Cities, and we got a logo. If we can. Oh, there we go. So who are we? This to me is like the most exciting part about this idea. And the idea is kind of exploring, like I said, like when you've got these 3D maps of the world, and I've been really lucky to find 3 founders that have all been thinking about this same problem, but from very different perspectives. So, it's me. I've been like 12 plus years working in AR, thinking about all this sort of stuff. And then there's Dennis Crowley, who I think a lot of people here might know his name. He was a co-founder of Foursquare. Dennis is probably the only person on earth who's built a social app that is connected to the real world and that we use. It was quite successful. And then John, my other co-founder, he's like a legend in the visual effects world. If anyone's seen The Matrix, he invented bullet time. He won an Oscar for that, and has did all the main Matrix films, and then went to ILM for a while, working on VR and AR, and then spent some time at Magic Leap working on the Magicverse. And so all of us have kind of looking at this idea of when you've got the world in 3D that you can kind of inhabit it. Me from the computer vision sort of technology background, John from the creative visual effects, like super high production quality, and Dennis from the use cases, and how does this affect like one person in their day-to-day life. And it's definitely the best team I've ever been able to work with, and I am loving the conversations that we have. So I'm not going to talk a lot about our product, because we're a brand new company. We don't have a product yet. We're still building it. Honestly, we're still trying to figure out exactly what it is. But I want to talk about the ideas that are driving the product, kind of the whys and the sort of motivations and the problems that we're thinking about, because they apply to pretty much everything in AR. Anyone who's working on AR sort of has got to think about these same sort of things. So I go into this a lot more. I wrote a blog. It's on our LivingCities.xyz webpage, or you can Google me, and it's on this concept of like, reality is scarce and the metaverse is infinitely abundant. And by that, what I mean is, in reality, you can really only exist in one place at one time. There can only be one of me in this spot right now. But in the digital version of this place, there could be an infinite number of things in this place. And you can kind of just turn the channel and you see all different things. And so that sort of funnel of the infinite online potential, how does that connect to the limited capacity of the real world? And what does that unlock in terms of use cases and economic value and all sorts of ideas that we're exploring? And so I want to talk a little bit more about why the real world matters. And the reason we care so much about places in what we're building is that I guess the unique thing about AR as opposed to VR or a mobile app is that when you experience AR, you experience it in context of a place. And we think that people are by far the most interesting things. We're most interested in ourselves and each other than places. But we don't exist independently of the place. And the place we're in almost affects who we are as people. Who I am right now at this event is different to who I am at home with my kids. It's different to who I am out at a bar or a club in the evening or at work. And we think that if you can explore what makes a place special, it's going to actually help us reveal who we are as people and how we connect and interact with each other. So we came up with 9 principles to connect the real world and the virtual world. We just came up with as many as we could think of and then counted them. That's how we got to 9. And I want to run through these because they really underpin the philosophy of what we're trying to explore and really underpin, I guess, should underpin the thinking into every AR application in some way or another. So I talked about reality being scarce. I touched on that earlier. It really is that case of why, of the infinite number of things that could be rendered in this place right now, which one matters? Why does that one matter? What's this versus that? And how do we make that choice? Why is it important to one person or another? And then 12 plus years in AR, and I'm sure everyone's heard this, is like you talk about AR and the first question you nearly always get is like, well, what's the killer app for this? What's the killer app? And there's no real answer. There isn't a killer app yet, but we believe that people ultimately are the killer app. We need to understand how we engage with each other. And honestly, my biggest miss in my time in this industry, my biggest thing that I just completely overlooked was that I'd always viewed AR as looking outwards through you hold your phone up or through your glasses and you look out at the world and you're drawing stuff in the world. And I completely was blindsided by the phenomenon of face filters because the camera's pointing at us. And so that just really showed AR should be about us and how we experience and connect and communicate to each other. And so that's kind of like I mentioned earlier, why we're thinking about places. The next one is we talk about the spirit of place. And this is a term you can Google. It kind of refers to really what a place feels like, what it sort of brings out in you. And everything that's gone on so far in terms of capturing reality, whether it's photogrammetry or 3D scanning or modeling and stuff, you're really just getting the geometry of a place. You're getting the shape of it, what it looks like in hopefully in 3D. And we definitely learned that's not enough. It can be pretty to look at, but there's nothing special about it. So what our opportunity problem, this is kind of where we're venturing into the unknown as a company, is how do you bring that spirit of a real place and sort of replicate that virtually so that if you virtually visit a real place, it should not just look like that place, but should feel like it. And that taps into a whole bunch of different sensory experiences and inputs and real-time data that we're trying to understand, which ones matter, which ones don't matter, and which ones, change how we feel about it. Because if you get that feeling of the place, that sense of presence, that's what's going to affect us and how we, act and behave. This next point about lore being built in. Anyone who's spent any time in any of the metaverse products that are out there today, like Facebook Horizons or VRChat or Rec Room, these are kind of empty, sterile, kind of dead places. You might have some fun games to play or chat to people, but the places themselves, there's no world building that's gone into them. And there's something that John really pointed out. Like he's worked on The Matrix, he's worked on Star Wars, and he just explained to us just how difficult it is for a creative person to create a world. That only happens like every 10 years or so. Someone might come up with a great new world. And you talked about something like Lord of the Rings, where Tolkien spent far more time trying to come up with the map and the history and the cultures and everything around Middle-earth than he did with the plot of getting the ring to Mount Doom. And that hasn't been done for really any metaverse product we're aware of today. But when you think about the real world, you kind of get all of that for free. The world building has happened over the last hundreds of years. When we think about New York, you don't sort of have to think and go, oh, I wonder what the street map looks like, or I wonder what clothes people wear, or what language they speak, or what do they do for fun, or what's the climate like, what's the history of this place. Like, all of that's there. You just have to kind of find out how to replicate it and bring it into the real world. And that should hopefully, make that place feel much more rich, much more engaging, and it'll also give you that context for the types of behaviors and activities that fit with that place. The next point was that communication is really the use case that matters. I talked about people being the killer app, but it's really, we don't think the metaverse, the opportunity of the metaverse isn't so much about entertainment. It's not about, a better way to play Fortnite or Minecraft or Roblox or those types of games, but we're trying to figure out how can you unlock a novel way for us to communicate that takes advantage of the unique things that AR or a metaverse experience can unlock, that sense of 3D, that all of the, I guess, medium, that a new 3D medium that comes into this. And so we think of you can call it a social network, you can call it communication, you can call it self-expression, but it's all the same sort of thing. And one of the ideas that we're really intrigued by is if you look back at photos, with cameras, a few years ago, the only thing you really used a camera for was like an archival record of your memory. It's like, here's where I've been on holidays, here's who I was with, you put it in an online or a physical album and save it. But then camera phones came around, everyone had them, it became free, easy to take photos. And Snap saw the potential of the 2D photo to not just be a memory, an archival memory, but actually it's a communication medium. I just send you photos. We send back and forth. Here's what we're doing. What are you up to? And that sort of shift from a medium going from one use to a new use for communication, we think there's that same potential for 3D content. As 3D content is now starting to get rapidly easier and easier to create, we're seeing new AIs come out that are kind of helping us co-create content. We think there's this potential that in a 3D space, one day we'll be able to communicate using 3D content back and forward. So instead of sending a snap, between ourselves, there'll be some DALL-E 3 that does 3D, and I'll be able to send you some idea I've had that turns into some animated 3D asset, and I send that back and forward between us, and we share our ideas, we express ourselves, express our personality through that medium. And so we think that what we're building with Living Cities will be the spaces where that sort of communication can start to happen. And then for a AR meetup, and someone who's worked in AR for a long time, we're not doing an AR company. I think anyone here who is a startup doing an AR company, you're probably starting in the wrong place. And I'm happy to discuss that one-on-one if you want to. But if you're doing a startup, you've got about 18 months of runway, if you're lucky, between rounds of funding and making progress. And as a market, there just aren't enough devices. You can't get enough distribution. You're going to end up either a enterprise consulting sort of business or a very small niche product. But if you really do want to have something that grows large, think about how your product can work even if AR never exists. And I guess the idea is that AR is then a feature, and then one day when AR glasses are prevalent, hopefully your product works great with AR being a lens into this experience. But it really isn't the right type of company to start with right now. And then the last three is, I touched on this before, reality itself, it's dynamic and it's alive. We called our company Living Cities, and the word living really taps into both, not just that it's how we live our daily lives and we want it to be a product that sort of captures that, but it is live, it's real time. We want to be able to make that map that we're building of a place actually feel alive. And so as much as we can tap into to sort of bring like real live events, live things that are happening, live weather, live lighting, everything, so that it really starts to reflect what's going on in reality at that point in time. Dennis has a saying that he really brought into Foursquare, which was that, he used to say you get on the internet to get off the internet. And Foursquare is a great example of that. You'd open the app, you'd spend some time in the app, you'd find out where your friends were, you'd put your phone in your pocket and go and have fun with your friends. It's a philosophy that we're really trying to bring to this product that we're building. It's really tempting to describe what we're building as we're building the Matrix, like we're literally building this copy of reality. You could put a VR headset on and live in it. And as John likes to remind us, he said the Wachowskis created the Matrix as a warning, not as a how-to guide. So we're very conscious of what are the types of interactions that can help us share in an experience that's happening live physically in the real world. We can feel like we're there, but it's not really a replacement. It's more like an incentive to actually go and experience it for real. And it's a subtle thing that we're still exploring what that actually means in terms of product, but it's one of the values that we're trying to really explore. And the last thing, I know everyone's probably heard the term digital twin or a mirror world. It's this idea that there's this virtual copy of the real world that exists. And there's a implied assumption in there that the digital copy is a perfect replica of reality. It's like every pixel in the digital world corresponds to an atom in the physical world, and every blade of grass is perfect. And it's really a fantasy to think of that. So we like to use the term reflections, like the digital world is a reflection of the real world, because there's a lot of scope there. Like a reflection can be like a literal reflection, like looking in a traditional mirror, but it can go beyond that, and you can have like a reflection that might be like a funhouse mirror that warps reality a little bit. It could be a reflection in a pond where you get more of an impressionistic feel of what reality, what between reality and the digital. And so we kind of use the term, it's a digital sibling. It's not quite a twin. You can tell it's kind of the same, but there's some creative space to kind of shift a little bit how that digital world looks and feels and behaves. And that's a really interesting creative, I think, opportunity for us to shift how we experience the digital version of a real place. And I think that's it. So I'll stop there. Happy to take lots of questions. I know I haven't talked about our product at all. We are starting with Washington Square Park as our first location that we're going to sort of activate and use that as our sort of test bed. And the reason for that is, all of these things, particularly all of the things that we want to explore in the digital world, they kind of happen in the real world in that place. It's social, it's creative, it's diverse, just weird stuff is happening all the time. It's reasonably recognizable worldwide. And we want to somehow bring that up into the real world and kind of tap it into the craziness of the metaverse. So we have a Discord. I'm on Twitter. You can Google my name. You find me, and that's where we'll be like doing sneak peeks and previews of what we're up to in the next couple of months. And always available to answer like any questions, either about this company or about past companies or about your company, and trying to share the mistakes I've made in my career as a founder in this space, and hopefully help you not make the same mistakes. So thank you.
Any questions for Matt? Okay.
Yeah, curious. How do you discover what's going on at Washington Square Park, both in metaverse and reality?
So it's a good question. It gets into that, like the question was, how do we discover what's going on in the real place? There's a, part of the challenge of what we're doing is what live data can you pull out of this real place? And, we chose a public place because we didn't want to have to go and negotiate access anywhere, and we just wanted to explore. So there's sort of things like weather and live data. You can take estimates of pedestrian traffic and vehicular traffic. But some of the things we can't do that would make our life a lot easier is we can't like put a surveillance camera pointing at the park. If we could do that, we could track every single person and capture their skeleton and render them in the metaverse in exactly the same place. We could put microphones everywhere and reflect the audio in. But just because of both the law and what's sane, we can't do that in this place. So it's always going to be like some limit of what we're doing. As a sort of a different example, we've had some conversations with Disneyland about Disney about Disneyland, and they've obviously got everyone wears a wristband. You're tracked everywhere you go. There's surveillance cameras, security cameras everywhere. Potentially, you could make a far more accurate live copy of a private location like that that's heavily surveilled, and turn that into a really accurate mirror world. But we're wrestling with what data can we extract out of Washington Square Park that's publicly available, that's crowdsourced, that's anonymized and sensitive to hopefully get to that point where it feels like the real place. So it's sort of one of the unknowns that no one really knows how to do it, and we're still figuring it out as we go.
Anybody else? No. All right. Okay. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. Thank you. All right. So up next, I'd like to invite my friend Mark Wendel. He's been attending. What's going on here? There we go. This meetup for about almost 5 years now, and he has recently begun working at, it's over 6 months now, working at Meow Wolf, and I'm looking forward to hearing about what he's been working on. So Mark Wendel, everybody.
Thank you. Before I start, I just handed out a little special object, which I encourage you to pass around. I'm not going to talk about it. It's just a little souvenir AR activated thing that we make available in our merch stores. If you point your phone at the little QR code and then turn it around, you'll see a little AR activation of one of our artists' work, one of our artists who has work across multiple of our exhibitions. So feel free to pass that around. I'm not going to talk about it anymore. So I'm Mark Wendel. I am currently the director of the Experience Design Studio at Meow Wolf, which is a digital innovation lab where we are exploring how to integrate digital media and emerging technology into our current and future exhibitions, as well as exploring what the digital future for Meow Wolf would look like. What does that Meow Wolf multiverse look like? That's what I'm going to use for the M word. Let me find out how many people have been to one or more Meow Wolf exhibitions. So not very many, which is fine. It means that I am going to spend a few moments talking about what Meow Wolf is to give you a little bit of context for the challenges that we face with the type of exhibitions that we have when it comes to incorporating digital media into what we do. So Meow Wolf is an arts and entertainment company that was founded back in 2008 by what I would call a scrappy collective of disenfranchised artists in New Mexico. The traditional arts community in New Mexico tends to be a little upscale, and they wanted to do their own thing. And they did so with support from George R.R. Martin in Santa Fe, and ended up creating something that was way more successful than they ever anticipated. So they created the original Meow Wolf, the original installation after lots of artful projects and various things before then. They built the House of Eternal Return, which is in Santa Fe, which is in an old bowling alley. After that, in the last few years, they built Omega Mart in Las Vegas, which is part of Area 51. The narrative, each of these exhibitions has a lot of embedded story, and that story is revealed through exploration and interactive exploration of the ephemera and artifacts and various displays throughout the space. And all of our visitors are encouraged to be very interactive and very tactile with everything. We encourage kind of a very creative approach to exploring our exhibitions. So the narrative that is revealed, without giving away too many spoilers, in the House of Eternal Return is that it's a house where something strange has happened. A family used to be there, they're not there anymore. What happened? Whatever they did, they may have broken space and time. So those are the types of science fiction-y narratives that we build into our exhibitions. Omega Mart in Las Vegas has a similar narrative where there's a corporation that uses some kind of strange ingredient called The Source that creates extra strange products in this grocery store that also has a science fiction-y component that you are encouraged to explore. The most recent exhibition is in Denver called Convergence Station. And this one represents a travel station that is kind of the convergence of 4 merged alien worlds. And you get to explore across all of these worlds. So in addition to the existing exhibitions, for those of you who have been to Denver to Convergence Station, you may not know that there's also a nearby theme park, Elitch Gardens, that we built a dark ride for with a lot of the same iconography and artwork that went into Convergence Station. So if you're ever in Denver, check that out as well. We've just announced that we are opening our next 2 exhibitions in Dallas and in Houston in the next year and a half. We're actively working on those right now. We are also a certified benefit corporation, or B Corp, which means that we are dedicated to being a company that is a force for good as well as a for-profit company, which means that we have a lot of active programs around social outreach, community outreach, education. It's about bringing arts to the community, particularly to underserved communities. And we have also are in the process of announcing very soon a philanthropic organization, which we're going to call the Meow Wolf Foundation. So keep your ears open for that. That'll be soon. I'm not going to talk too much about Matt because I'll cry, but we just lost one of our founders a month ago, and I just wanted to acknowledge his legacy. He was central to the founding of the company, and it's been a devastating last 4 weeks for us. So, on to the fun stuff. We are exploring how mixed reality can be integrated into our exhibitions. And this is all a bit before my time. I've been with the company just for 6 months or so. But I want to talk about a couple of previous projects that my colleagues have done before my time, because I think they're relevant to communicating to you the types of challenges that we will have with integrating digital content into our exhibitions. And those 2 projects we're calling Project Sparkle and Project Cortex. But before I do that, let me talk to you about the various ways that we engage our visitors with story. So obviously, environmental and video and audio are our key component for these fully immersive physical environments that we create, that you walk around. The sonic environment is so important to that. There are artifacts, written documents, ephemera that you can sit down. We have deep divers who go back day after day and will spend hours and hours just reading through all the material that we've got all over the place. There are subreddits where people share this stuff out and dive deep with each other. But in addition to the physical artifacts, we promote all of our docents, or we call them creative operators, to be a performative aspect of the exhibitions. So live performance and role playing is a part of immersing our visitors in the story. I'll talk about this a little bit more, but we also have at two of our exhibitions the ability for you to use these RFID-enabled cards to what we call boop. You boop at a boop station, and in doing so, you collect memory that's associated with this ID on this QR code, so that you can later on, in a browser, review all of the memories that you've collected. In Denver, the currency for the narrative there are memories. And so that's another way for us to engage story. And then wearable tech or mobile tech and AR and VR are other things that we've been experimenting with, but aren't necessarily a fully integrated way to experience story yet. So let's talk about Project Sparkle. This was done a couple of years ago. This was a project that was designed to answer the question, can a mixed reality digital experience in an already busy, maximalist, artful environment be compelling and add to the existing narrative that's already there? So to answer that question, a prototype was built with HoloLens 2 headsets in the House of Eternal Return in Santa Fe, in a particular area of the house that we call Fancy Town. And in addition to trying to answer that question about can it be compelling, it also let us do a few other things under the hood, testing out what we call EOS, or our Experience Operating System, which our software team has built as an internal kind of message bus and an operating system to connect all of our interactive exhibitions. It was also a way for us to see whether people would be willing to do like an add-on pay for an extra experience. You come in to the house and then we offer you an extra experience in headset for something else. So it was a monetization test as well. It was also done in a way that is very important to us. Whenever we do tests like this, we do them in the context of the actual narrative of the space. So for example, instead of telling people that they're going to put on a HoloLens 2 and have a mixed reality experience, they are putting on a transdimensional fielding device. And their goal when they get into the headset is to find anomalies and to clean up reality distortions. So we always couch it within this kind of narrative context. The creative operators who were helping them get into and out of their headsets were researchers for the Society of Peripheral Studies. And that's something I find is missing in a lot of for example, mobile AR apps. You don't necessarily want to be told that you're doing AR on your phone. You want a magic window on this magical device that gives you the ability to see something that you can't otherwise see, a magical portal into another world, right? So that's something that is very important to the way that we approach projects like this. This project was a partnership with Nclu. If any of you have heard of them, they create a kind of artist-friendly XR authoring platform, kind of like a game engine that works in browser. And they are also the creators of a couple of immersive experiences in San Francisco and in Denver. The Verse and Unreal Gardens. Has anybody seen those? Cool. All right. So you know what that's about. Let me show you what this looked like. I have to move the cursor over to the second screen. Which direction do I go, Elena? There it is. I lost my cursor. There we go. There we go. Okay. So this is what people are seeing when they get into headset. And one of the things we were interested in is how can you explore digital to physical or physical to digital interactions. So you'll notice when somebody touches a particular object, it's coming up here in a second, that there will be a physical state change in the space. Watch this. Boom. There's a tracking light in the ceiling that follows them when they touch that physical object. And it also sends the little hamster up the stairs named Niemcescu. He's part of the narrative of the house. And here comes that tracking tracking light again. One of the things to notice here is just kind of how busy that was. So let me pull my cursor back. There we go. Okay. Oh, next. All right, rather than talk about what we learned from that, I'm going to move on quickly to the next project, and then when I finish this one, we'll talk about some of our learnings from these. This next project was also meant to explore physical to digital and digital to physical interactions. We called this project Cortex, and this was structured in a type of project that we call a vertical slice. Think of a vertical slice as a slice through a piece of cake. The cake is the overall experience, but under the hood, the layers represent a variety of technologies that we want to test. But again, we always present that stack of technologies in a narrative context. So the technologies that we were interested in exploring with this project included these boop cards, RFID cards, mobile gameplay, mobile AR, digital to physical and physical to digital interactions, as well as the idea of a physical reward for executing tasks in a digital context. So I'm going to step through some of the steps. There was quite a bit involved in this, so I'm going to skim through a lot of this. But basically, when our testers, when people came through, we gave them a boop card and we gave them a phone. And they first onboarded and received a mission. And their mission they received from a phone call at a phone booth. And the phone call was somebody asking for help to reclaim their memories. You needed to collect the memories, and the memories were being corrupted or degraded by slime. So the boop card is what tracked your inventory, your user ID, and the phone was used to give you a variety of augmented reality experiences as you went to the various stations here. So once you've got your mission, you know what you need to do, collect memories. You walk around the space, find these memories that are being corrupted by slime, you boop in, you aim your phone at it, and you can see in this case on the bottom that they've just collected a fragment of a memory. It's a piece of somebody's face. It's not a full memory yet, it's just a fragment. So by working their way around the space, they were able to eventually collect multiple memory fragments. But those fragments were not connected yet. So one of the next stations that people needed to go to was the memory bank, where they could trade, because they found out that they had an incomplete set of memories to make a whole face, to return this memory to this person for the mission. So they went to the memory bank, traded a memory, and got the one that they wanted, again by booping in and using their phone to execute on the task. At that point, they had the fragments they needed for a full memory, but the memory was not returned to its holistic state. So they went to the oscillator to restore those fragments into a complete memory. And this was an interesting example of a mixed digital and physical interaction, because this oscillator was a sculptural piece that some of our engineers built that included these copper rings. On the phone, you got clues about what pattern you needed to essentially touch. And these musical rings, you had to tap in a particular pattern to repeat that musical pattern. And when you did so back on your phone, the memory was essentially stitched together and became complete. Finally, you had a completed memory. You went back to the phone booth and let Dopamina, this character who's asking for help, let you know that you're returning this completed memory to her. And in return, and some numbers came up on your phone, which turned out to be a combination lock for a little box that was sitting next to the phone booth. And when you unlocked the box with that code and opened it up, there was a little printer in there, and that printer printed out a physical souvenir, a reward for you finishing this mission, completing the memory, and returning it. So overall, this is a little silly. There's a little bit of gameplay involved, but it represented to us a really valuable mix of learnings around how do you truly integrate the digital and the physical in a way that is a constant back and forth interaction. We don't want things to be entirely virtual or entirely physical. We want people to have the ability to kind of influence one by actions in the other. So now I'll talk about some of the learnings that we came away with from both of these, as well as other experiences that we've been working on. In general, people love the little critters. Little Nimsescu was a hit. So anything that you did that caused a little critter to do something was great. People love that. People love the physical rewards, even though it's just a little paper printout. It's like a receipt. They took it home. They loved it. There was something about that was rewarding enough that people felt like there was something very tactile for this mixed digital experience that they just went through. Digital rewards for physical actions, that's something that we're just starting to tap into. But for example, that when you did something digitally and caused a physical state change to happen, lights, video, audio, something happened in the space around you by doing something digital, that can also be very rewarding. One thing we didn't anticipate is a few people were in headset at any particular time for the end clue for Project Sparkle. Other people who weren't in headset saw these people mysteriously going over here, waving their hands around and doing something, and they suddenly saw a light change over here, and they thought, what's going on there? That's really interesting. For some reason, people thought that was absolutely fascinating, and it attracted them to want to try it themselves. They thought, what magical thing are you doing that's causing the physical state of the space to change? And physics. Physics is always something that just tends to ground an experience, a digital experience, in a certain way that people respond really well to. Bouncing a digital ball around the space and having it interact with the physical walls is something that people really liked. Stuff that didn't work, some of you probably anticipate this, having a boop card and a phone at the same time and having to boop and then use your phone and hold it up while you're doing something else, that's awkward. We're probably not going to stick with that. We haven't incorporated this kind of thing specifically into our exhibitions, but it's a useful thing to still get feedback on. You have to do it to know. The other thing that I think we've all realized is that the hardware really isn't there yet, right? Headsets are laggy. Field of view is terrible. Honestly, we all have phones, but this is a shitty interface for AR, all right? It's gonna get better. Someday there will be nice glasses like this. So the point is, keep on developing, keep on doing things, keep on experimenting, because the hardware will get there, but right now, it's just not there yet, and we have to be very conscious of the user experience for our visitors when we stick them into a headset or put a phone in their hand and have them try to have some kind of mixed reality experience. And that's one of the reasons we're a little bit hesitant about jumping into these things in a big way right now. We have to do these experiments now, and we're anticipating the hardware is going to get better, but it's not quite there yet. The other thing we noticed is that when you've got a headset on like a HoloLens, and you're navigating around in there, you're kind of missing a lot of the things going on. So if we want to have digital actions create physical state changes in the place, we have to make sure that we do so in a way that people can see and respond to. And again, the headset's probably not the best interface for that in the long term, or maybe when we get better headsets like glasses like this, it'll be less of a problem. Overall, then, in conclusion, we are actively working on figuring out this problem. How do you get people to have interesting mixed digital and physical reactions in these maximalist spaces that we create, as well as beyond the walls eventually? We're working on a mobile app. The mobile app will have business functions like merch and ticketing and so forth, but will also be a part of the in-world narrative and will assist you in various ways for your visit to a Meow Wolf exhibition, and may have, we're doing some prototypes right now, may have some kind of bounded, time and space bounded augmented reality experiences. And I say time and space bounded because A, we don't want people having their phones out and stumbling around like zombies looking at the environment that they're in, when what we really want them to constantly be doing is just engaging physically with the space. So when we create these experiences, we want them to be something that they get a notification for. There's something here that you can engage with. You have a short engagement with it, and then you're encouraged to put the phone back in your pocket. People are wandering around taking selfies already enough, and we don't want to add to that. We consider it a problem of people stumbling around with their phones out. So to that point, we are trying to build in a way that encourages both the digital and the tactile. What will that multiverse look like once we go outside of the walls? I don't have the answer for that yet, but we are working on it. One of the fun things about this job right now is that our exhibitions, given that they're connected with our show control systems and our message bus systems and so forth, we can think of as a giant IoT device. And that, from a developer standpoint, is such a fun way to think about this. Imagine having a 20,000 square foot IoT device with 1,000 things that react to signals that you can send to and react to on your phone or on headset. So I personally am having so much fun dealing with that. The other thing that we're looking into is what kind of XR experiences can you give people if you don't want them to use a phone and you don't want to put a headset on their head, right? Holographic displays are coming out there. The Looking Glass, there are all sorts of new technologies coming out there that, like the Lightfield Labs folks, they're not released yet, but we're really interested in how can you give groups of people interesting mixed reality experiences without requiring them to put something in front of their face or hold something in their hands. And I encourage you all as AR developers and creators and artists to kind of also think about the experiences that you want people to have, but beyond the phone and beyond the headset. How can you sense people and track them and track their poses and do things with what they're doing and what their eyes are looking at in order to create interesting experiences? So to close, I'll share with you some of our internal design goals when it comes to how to think about creating experiences. We want everything to be socially participatory. We'd love to get strangers together to be able to force them to solve a problem together. Physically active. Pokemon Go is great for that reason, and Pikmin Bloom and so forth. We want people to get their steps in when they're having these great experiences. Encouraging human interaction. We're also trying to stay away from goal-oriented gameplay, make things non-competitive. It's not about collecting things. It's about creating things together. We want our participants and our visitors to be creative participants in the spaces that we immerse them in, and we want them to be playful. And with that, I will finish up and say thank you and take questions.
Thanks, Mark. Does anybody have any questions for Mark? No. I have a question. When are they going to open up on the East Coast? Or is there a location on the East Coast and I'm not aware of it? And it closed down the one in Texas and moved that one up here instead.
After Texas, we are thinking about 2025, 2026 for more exhibitions around the country. I can't tell you where yet.
Any other questions? No? You should definitely close the one in Texas, though. I've had it with Texas. All right. Thank you so much.
I can address Texas because I know politically there's a lot of challenges there, but how better to fix things that you think are broken than to go into those communities and to create a voice for the people that you want to have a voice.
Yes. Mark, thank you very much. Amazing. Thank you, everybody, very much. Please feel free to enjoy whatever's left over there. And we just want to be really cognizant of time tonight. Last time, people were here way past the time that they were supposed to be here. So please don't be here at 10:45. Thanks again, ZeroSpace. Thanks again, Dion. And this has been a really fun night. Thanks. I hope to talk to a lot of you before you go tonight. Thank you.